It's always a fabulous day when you have a dental podcast and you get Gordon Christian, the god of dentistry, to show up. Now, as you know, he lectures in Scottsdale every year on Good Friday. He's done it as long as I know. What year did you start doing that?
Oh, 25 years ago, I guess.
Yeah, and so I said, well, you're already coming down anyway. Why can't you just drive by my studio? And he obliged. He's that way. But Gordon, I wanted to bring you in here so bad. So the pandemic really got me and Ryan to retire. I mean, after the pandemic, you couldn't travel, and I was booked lecturing like 5 years in advance. Got off all that train wagon. We did a bunch of podcasts. You remember we had you and Rella and microbiologists all through the pandemic, and then I just retired. But the reason we come back and started doing one show once a week is because every email I get, every phone call, text, or social media message, they're all the same. They look like they're all written by the same person, and they're not happy. They're 3 to 4 years out of school. They're
in debt over their head.
$300,000 to $500,000 in debt, and they're working at some DSO clinic, and they're just not happy. And then anytime I say anything, they're like, you're old. You graduated in the good old days. So they're looking at us saying, oh, Gordon and Howard, they graduated back when the worst dentist would do great. And so this whole coming back is trying to guide these kids. What would you say to these kids?
That's one of the major reasons I'm still doing what I'm doing. I could have retired 25 years ago, but I see the same thing you're saying routinely. In our hands-on courses in Utah, they're small courses, 20 to 40, we're seeing people who had no clinical education in their school. They've watched our videos, would you believe? And that was their clinical education. I'm seeing some who are very, very brilliant, but the hands situation is not there anymore.
Because they haven't practiced, or because they just don't have it?
Both. It's easy to get into dental school now, as you know. Back in the olden days, it was a good bit harder, and you had to carve wax or chalk or something to show you had hands. Now there's nothing like that. They get in, they may have a straight A average, because that's all escalated 1 to 2 grade points. A C back then would be an F now. An A now would be probably a C plus back in the dark ages. So it's both. We're getting some candidates who could be smarter, and we're getting many who have no hands. I've recommended to several of them, why don't you just go and get a PhD and teach a basic science if you're interested in medical, rather than trying to learn how to use your hands, because you've got to use your hands every day, all day, 20, 30, 40 patients. Not just to shake hands either, to actually do something small. So I'm seeing the same thing you're seeing.
Yeah, I remember in dental school one time, it was we were in lab. I forgot what year it was. And one of my friends said, wow, do you realize everything's backward in the mirror? And I'm like, oh, dude, that's scary. That's like really frightening. Because he's just not seeing it. I had a lot of patients, well, not a lot, but 4 or 5 that played for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And one of them hit the grand slam to win the World Series, and is married to a hygienist. But I asked him one time, I said, when you look at when the football players and basketball players come in here, you can tell from a mile away they're professional athletes.
Yeah.
When the baseball players come in here, I mean, you guys just look like a normal guy at the grocery store. I said, what is it? He said, it's all your vision. He says, most people, when you throw a pitch at them, they just see a ball coming. He said, we always see it like it's a 6 or a distrend. And he says, I already knew in the 2nd grade that if it comes out and it's dropping to the left, I need to swing to the, So how can they test for these kids? Got eye-hand coordination better for dental school?
Way back, like 45 years ago, I developed a little box in which I had various mirrors. And then they would do something in that box. And many could not really understand, when you're going that way, you don't necessarily move that way. And that was a very clear identification of whether they had eye coordination with hands. And many did not.
So we're looking at dental school and hygiene school class sizes at an all-time high. Because when I was getting out of dental school, they were closing down dental schools.
Yeah.
And now they're adding them again.
We have 72 schools now, Howard. You probably know that, and 4 more in the planning. So that'll be, believe it or not, I can't. That's 76 schools. What are we going to do with 76 schools? And yet, some of the
They're going to support 76 deans to fly around the world, all these conferences in Dubai and London and Paris.
Yeah. Well, and then many of the deans have never practiced. That's another one of the problems. Many have. The dean we currently have at the University of Utah, I've known for 40-plus years, Rory Hume, and he is a dean of deans. He's much like Art Degoni was with UOP. Where he has practiced, he has been traumatized, as all of us clinicians have. He understands it, and therefore he's very integrated with the students and very promoting of their progress as they come along. We have a lot of deans the kids never see. They're somewhere up in the inner sanctum of the building.
I mean, can you imagine playing on a football team and the coach never played football?
It's like being a basketball coach and never shot a hoop.
Yeah.
We've got some major
So you got a lot of schools and incentives matter. I mean, incentives matter. We see it in wisdom teeth. We see in countries like Germany where they different mechanisms of reimbursement. They only pull about a third of the wisdom teeth.
Yeah.
And then you come to America, and most oral surgeons have never seen a wisdom tooth that shouldn't come out. We see it in the cesarean rate, C-section rate. In the 20 richest countries, they average about a 4 to 5% C-section rate. In America, it's a 25% because they give you $700 for a vag delivery and $5,000 for a C-section. So they can find a reason for a C-section to block away. So the dental schools, they're going to keep expanding because they're making money.
Yeah.
And every time I talk to the dean, I say, why do you need this much money? And they go, well, if we raise the tuition $10,000, it has no effect on our number of applications.
No.
So they're gonna. So I mean, obviously, they have no incentive to keep these kids out of less debt or anything like that. So now it comes down to the kid. Economics matter. They're in America. There's a lot of dental schools. They got a lot of debt because they can get it, and then they come out of school. My question is, how are they going to pay that back without over-treating?
I had the opportunity, it's been several years ago, a young fellow at Harvard who was getting his MBA asked me if I would work with him relative to that question. How long will it take to pay off? Then it was about 100 to 250. How long would it take a general dentist at the typical general dentist in the U.S., according to ADA, or has a gross revenue of about $800,000. They have a 72% overhead. That leaves, obviously $500,000 went to somebody else. They're down now to $300, $250, and they got 40% tax on that. How long would it take at that salary level, which is average? How long would it take at that salary level to pay back? Even then, it was a much lower figure, and we got about 20 years. 20 years. That would be the apparent fluff on the top of what they had to feed their family with.
On the flip side, it's pretty easy to argue, like, come on, dude, the average dentist last year, according to BLS, made like $179,000 last year, which puts you clearly in the top 10% income.
Sure.
So then it comes down to, we've both had a bunch of kids. That's the only thing I beat you. You had 3 kids and I had 4. That's the only thing.
I've got 8 grandkids and 15 great grandkids now.
I got 8 grandkids.
Have you?
But so now I got another record to work on. They got to make me 15. but the thing is, you got 15 grandkids. Would you say, yeah, $500,000? And they get a career that puts them in the top 10% income the rest of their life? How could you complain? I mean, you're basically buying a job. And most people don't realize you do buy a job. I mean, I've counseled so many kids. Like, I remember so many times, the kid will tell me that they don't know what to do. They didn't go to school. And I'll say, look, you can go get a truck instead of your little chick mobile fancy car. Go get a truck and go get a trailer. And if you buy a Bobcat, you can sell yourself with that Bobcat for $1,000 a day.
Sure.
And if you get a front loader, you can get up to $4,000 a day. I mean, really. My youngest son wanted to. He loved spray foam installation, and the oldest two loved welding. And as soon as they did it for other people for 2 or 3 years, I said, okay, now you need to get your own truck and welder, and the other one need to get the truck and installation. And they're making dentist money. So, if you buy a $174,000 spray foam rig, you can make $174,000 a year.
Sure.
So the question is it worth $300,000 to $500,000 to buy a $200,000 job for the rest of your life?
It depends on the motivation of whomever we're talking about. If someone really wants to go into a service profession, they can go to the lowest paid level, and that's a evangelical person. Or they can go to the highest level, who is an entrepreneur, who's willing to learn how to use more than 2 hands. The average American dentist has 2 dental assistants, 1 hygienist. They can take 1 more assistant on and increase their productivity 40% or even more.
From 2 assistants to 3? Or
Yeah,
from
3. From 2 to 3.
From 2 to 3?
Yeah. And you double it fairly fast with another hygienist, too, who are really paid very well at the moment. I have several nurses in my family. They're making about a half to 2/3 what a hygienist now makes as they start out.
The nurses?
The nurses
make half of what the hygienist started with?
Yeah. Half to 2/3.
Yeah.
And the newest nurse we have in the family got into the University of Utah as a neonatal nurse, and it was right during COVID. One by one, all the senior nurses quit. She became senior nurse 6 months in, and she was terrified because she didn't know enough to know what to do. She stayed for a while, and then finally she had to quit because she felt so terrified every time she'd go in. She'd work 12-hour shifts with 1 hour to prepare and 1 hour to clean up. 14-hour shifts for a pittance of money compared to hygiene. We let that get out of hand.
But you said she became a nurse during the pandemic.
Yeah.
God, the nurses in the previous pandemic, they had like the shortest life expectancy in America during that whole Spanish influenza. Did you ever hear about that?
Yeah.
They drive into small towns to recruit these nurses, knowing that when they get their job, they'd probably be dead in a month.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Crazy.
But back when I got out of school in '87, the head of Delta Dental was Ed Judd, and I remember I was open. Anyway, I called him up and I told him, I want to take you to lunch because I graduated in May, opened up September, and the first 4 months, he was like, I don't know, like a quarter of my revenue. I forgot what the number was, but it was a couple $100,000.
Sure.
So I called him up, and so I wanted to have a relationship with that guy, So we started having, and back then they were normal. Within 15, 20 years, they all treated you like some legal pariah or something.
Yeah.
But I used to go down to Ed with my bookkeeper and accountant, and I would lay out for him, and I'd say, dude, look, I don't need this much money for a crown and a partial and a denture and a molar root canal. But I'm paying this hygienist back then $20 an hour, and you're giving me $40 for a cleaning, and I still got the operatory. I just said, can you just give me more money for a cleaning, exam, X-ray, and a filling?
Yeah.
And less money for a crown, a root canal, pulling forwards, And it's like, and then when I went to MBA school, everyone, there was like 4 people from a hospital, and they said, yeah. He says, you go in there and talk to a neonatal nurse and everything, and they give you $40. He said, but we do a coronary artery bypass graft, we get $100,000. We do a replace hip, we get $70,000. We get knees, we get $50,000. So we have to do 4 big procedures a day, either 4 bypasses, so their whole thing is profitable if they get these big. So the question comes back to insurance. It's the oldest debate on Dental Town. Is it better to do the American system where you run 4 operatories, a high volume with a low margin, or is it better to switch to like a Singapore or Japanese model where pretty much every dentist has no employees? If he does have an employee, it's his wife or his sister. His own cell phone sitting right there.
That's
he has
right.
no overhead. I mean, literally hardly any overhead at all. I only know of a couple people like that in America. So, do you think America's high volume, low margin is going to change?
I see three levels, Howard. I see the boutique practice, which is probably not even 5% of American dentists, where they go slowly. They're often higher quality, but not always. So boutique is small, but that's what you see in most of the continuing education courses. As you know, we have always aimed at the other 97% who are real-world dentists. And that group has to go fast, has to use more hands than two. And then you've got the whole bottom end, which is 4 or 5% that could be more honest, could be more ethical. You know that as well as I. But this large piece in the middle, well over 90%, I don't know any other way than to increase the number of people who are helping you. And you get into elective items, sleep medicine. You get into occlusal splints. You look Botox. There are half dozen things they could leap on, learn enough to do that, and enhance income enormously, because all three of those are mainly staff. If the staff, let's just take an example. Occlusal splints. An average American practice general is about 2,000, 1,800 to 2,000. And at least 1/3 of them have grinding or clenching bruxism. At least, 30 to 50%, but let's say 35. And a simple educational piece to that patient who you see at age 22 or 23, and the teeth, the canine rise has started to go, the incisal guidance has started to go, and you say, look at me, I'm 100 years old, not quite, but just about, and I still have teeth, and you're 25, and you've worn them down 1/3 already. I think it would be well if we could put a piece of plastic in there, form-fitted to your mouth, and you would wear it out in 5 to 10 years. But in the meantime, it's only $500 to $600 in today's fees, and you will still have teeth at my age. Otherwise, you're going to wait to 45 or 50, and you will have a $32,000 rehab necessary, or rip your teeth out. Very few people will turn that down. Now think about it. It's 1/3 of a practice. That's 600 people. 600 people with the proper education will want a splint. 600 people times $500, $250,000. That's one thing, and it's almost all staff. If the staff learn how to do that well, and my gosh, in my practice, you might even remember Karen Preston. She was with me 39 years. She's now teaching in one of the local hygiene schools. She's still excited about dentistry. Not the money. She's excited about helping people. I think I have about 6 ways they can enhance productivity and therefore revenue. And that's one of them. That's the main one.
My 2 favorite staff years were Cece and Dee Dee. Remember Cece and Dee Dee?
They were both fairly sexy little gals, yeah.
I didn't even notice. I forgot they were girls. But anyway, I think I did all 12 of your courses in a row with Mike DeTola.
Yeah.
And they were so helpful.
They were
just so helpful. They kept you focused.
We have educated staff and we have trained staff, and they're very different words, as you know. The trained staff, now you suck, you blow, you hold cheek. The educated staff says, why do I have to hold the cheek? Why do I have to suck in this position? Why can't I suck that way? Because you bring bugs all over. You think about it. If you suck that way, you pull them down the drain. I try to educate, and, Belinda is our major person now. She's been with me 39 years, and she knows more than I do, frankly, because she's seen the whole materials end and the sterilization end, which you and I don't get to see, Clint.
Well, you say something great about the splints, because the bottom line is when you look at a hygiene practice, I mean, when you get the fee from the insurance for a cleaning and exam and a half set of bite wings a year, and then what the market wages are for a hygienist,
Yes.
and then they're taking operatory. And I want to tell you something about the hygienist operatory. There's no return investment on anything you put on. Because for 40 years I played this game. They say, well, I need to have an X-ray machine in here, and so you put the X-ray machine there, and then they're like. Well, we need the Cavitron. We could do it faster if we had this, if we had that. They've asked me for all these things to increase your productivity for 40 years, and then you say, well, how long does it take for a cleaning? 1 hour. And you're saying, okay, your next patient has an upper denture, lower partial, has 2 canines. How much time you need? 1 hour.
10 minutes.
And so they've had no increase in their productivity. Right. So no matter how much money you dump into a hygiene department, if they can't do the cleaning in a shorter appointment, if they can't go from 60 minutes to 50 or 45, then there's no calculating return on investment of hygiene.
Correct.
So and then the dental companies, the insurance companies, Delta. When I got out, these Delta boards, every Delta board was at least half dentist. And now every Delta board I've seen, they don't have a dentist on there. And if they do get a dentist, they handpicked a company boy.
Yes.
If you get on the Delta deal, you're already wearing knee pads, and you're completely a company boy. So that means you're gonna have to do other procedures, like you're saying, like occlusive friend. So there's Invisalign, there's surgical placement. I always thought that the going all the way back to G.V. Black, that Pierre Fichard, really, dentistry was a toothache business. Everybody came in with a toothache, and you have to be able to definitively treat that with a root canal bottom crown, or extract it and place an implant in a crown. So do you think that's the scope of clinical dentistry? Where I'm getting at is, what is the scope of these clinical dentists when they come out of school? What do they need to look at and say, I need to learn these skills if I'm going to pay back $500,000 in student loans and treat this population of 300 million people?
If you take a typical naming of all the procedures in dentistry, including class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is very broad. It's 140 procedures. 140 procedures. What do they come out of school knowing? I would say to a maybe safe level, a half dozen procedures. Maybe to a not really a competent level, another 10. They're 140. So they have to figure out if they have hands, first of all. If they have hands, operative, crown and bridge. Let's say they don't. I'm going to irritate somebody with what I'm going to say. If they have a little problem with the hands, they're better in one of the surgical areas because that heals. The teeth don't heal. Well, they heal slightly, but not much. So they have to figure out who they are. Do they want to do endo all their life?
And if they don't have any arms... Is it just ortho?
Yeah, because the staff takes the whole load. Yeah. No, seriously, they have to figure out who they are, what they are. Do they want to work for somebody? And the millennials want to work for somebody. You know that. And therefore, they have a check every month. They get there at 8 or 9. They leave at 4 or 5. They're not worried about malpractice. They're not worried about any kind of overhead because they have a certain quota, but it's usually a pedestrian level. Once they learn who they are, in fact, we have about half of our attendees of hands-on courses who are young dentists, 0 to 5 years. This last course, last week, we got another one as soon as I get back from here. Last week, we had all the way from one who was just going to graduate in a month to guys that have been out 40 years. And they're like two different planets. They're not even close. One was taught many procedures, more than today, at relative competency, and didn't even know them. Well, there was no CEREC. There was no cone beam. All the things. We've got, I was just playing the last few days with trying to look at the new radiographic sensors, because the sensors are not allowing us to see initial caries, and they're costing $13,000 for. I could buy a used car for the same thing. It's interesting where we are today with with the numbers of procedures that they come out competent in. It's too few.
So of those 140 procedures, I wonder how many of them the Delta fee schedule would cover the overhead of the average overhead. I wonder how many of those. I wish we could do a study where we just say, okay, how many of these are we going to lose money on?
Yeah.
Because Delta has decided that you should get, and they're doing it for specialties. Delta is driving out, they're elevating the specialists. So here's what the DSOs have gone through the journey. When the DSO, and by the way, there's always been a bad guy in dentistry. I remember when I got 97, it was capitation.
Yeah.
Capitation, HMOs were going to ruin dentistry. And I looked at the concept, and it kind of reminded me of great theory, but then who's the evil guy behind it?
Yeah.
And so what they said is, okay, we're paying you basically $20 a month and all this costs. But we think that you have extra incentives to do unnecessary dentistry. So what we're going to do, we're just going to give you the lump sum payment.
Sure.
And then you could decide, and if you don't do all this unnecessary services, you'll get more money. And I thought, well, that is a great idea. But then the money that they were going to give you a month was $8. It's like, whoa, where'd the other $12 go? And I'm like, what? So now, we got this same thing where, they just decide that, that they'll give me $800 for a molar root canal, but if you're an endodontist, they'll give you $1,500. So if you're a DSO and I hire a general dentist and I say, okay, well, you want to do molar endo? It's a big procedure. And then the lawyer for the DSO is saying, yeah, but these malpractice people, they only sue general dentists for root canals. They're not going to sue an endodontist because their success rate is virtually nil. So he's a specialist. He's going to get other specialists, and they never lose. So if I have a general dentist do 10 root canals and one of them fails, I get $800 a piece. I'm paying the general dentist 25%. Mm-hmm. If I have and then I get the board complaints, lawsuits, whatever. And if I have an endodontist do it, the insurance is going to pay me $1,500. And the endodontist gets 50. He'll want 40% or 50% or about higher deal, but the practice still makes more money, and then you don't have the lawsuit. So I see the same thing with implants, where it's quite obvious that when a kid comes out of school and places his first 10 implants, if those are the worst 10 implant outcomes. There are. I mean, your first is your worst, as opposed to someone who's done 10,000 implants. So if you do an implant and a crown, and you do 10 of those, and one of those fails, you have to refund that, and you have to redo it. And then so you redo that. Now you've taken the profit of about 6 or 7 or 8 successful cases to cover these 2 at a loss. So now, and then the lawsuits are very hungry. So they say, oh, well, we'll bring in a periodontist or an oral surgeon, because once again, the dental malpractice field, they say, okay, first we're going to get a judgment from you, from your local board, then we're going to take it to a jury. And then when you take a specialist to the board, nothing happens. And when you take a general dentist to the board, they get swept. So I'm getting paid the money for a Ford Escort, but I'm held to the standard of a Ford Taurus. Mm-hmm. And the Ford Escort gets all the lawsuits, and no one sues a Ford Taurus. So
that's right.
So what is this kid supposed to do?
Become as competent as a typical specialist in their particular town. I've helped a lot of dentists bail out of lawsuits. And one of the questions that's always asked is that the standard of care, which, as you know, is a legal phraseology. What's the standard of care? And if the standard of care is, here's the last one we did. It was a video testimonial where the dentist had margins open on crowns. I would judge at least 1/10 of a millimeter. Well, now that everybody's starting to use scanners, not everybody, 40 to 50%, the margins are wide open anyway. So what's the standard of care? The scanner has taken the accuracy down to a very low level. I never say yes or no to an attorney. I'll say, when they say, is that standard of care? The question I threw back was, in what location geographically? Well, in Lander, Wyoming. Well, that's a fairly high-level group. And yes, the standard of care would be maybe better than Zimbabwe. I'll lead them right down the path because they want a yes or no answer, and then they pin you down. Right now, the most payback from a lawsuit is on molar endo, general dentist, no cone beam. That's number one, according to Mitch Gardner. I just did a video with him, a New Jersey dentist who's helped dentists bail out of a lot of lawsuits. The second most common one is implants. General dentist, no cone beam. The cone beam is essential. The third one is third molars. General dentist, no cone beam. Those three, if they
Did this guy work at a cone beam company?
Pardon me?
Did this guy you're talking about, did he work
No,
at
he's
a
in
cone
New Jersey. No, the bottom line is that would be standard of care. So let's say a general dentist does something that goes wrong in one of those three areas. They have no cone beam. They're a general dentist. They'll start writing the check. It's about that time. If that's a specialist, quite another story. You're very correct.
Yeah, the cone beam is, that is so nice. I had one for so long, and to be able to see the missing canal, the fourth canal, to be able to see where the lingual nerve is. It is. In fact, you're the one who coached me that the fastest way to increase quality dentistry.
Oh.
You told me the fastest way to increase quality dentistry was magnification.
Yeah, no
where
question.
It loops.
No question.
Well,
and with cone beam,
which I'm considering a form of magnification. It's a
sure.
It's a visual enlightenment.
With cone beam, Dale Miles, who I'm sure you know, has given quite a few courses with me and for me, and he noted a point that many of you dentists watching this don't know. The highest revenue producer with the least time and effort is cone beam. Although they pay $65,000 to $120,000 for it, they have almost no overhead once they've paid that thing off. And all they do is walk in, look at it, this, tell the patient $250 to $500. They don't understand that. Can't afford it. Yes, you can't afford not to have it.
My son Ryan is really, he's a computer genius freak. The apple did not fall from the tree, and we're talking about from his mother's tree, not my tree. No. He's the smartest one in the family. But he's really big into AI. How close are we that when they do these cone beams that the AI is going to read the X-ray instead of waiting for some primate to read it? You
picked a good procedure. A lot of dentists don't know what AI is, and I don't even pretend that I know. But I have taught statistics a lot in my life. What is a meta-analysis? It's a whole flock of papers, maybe 2,000, 3,000, that somebody, usually an academic who has some time, will squish it down to maybe 40 papers on a judgment of what's the highest level of research, what's the lowest level of research, and there's some legitimacy in that. Now I've got 40. And you know a meta-analysis as well as I. When you read a meta-analysis, it almost always says, we need more research on this. Well, I know you need more research, you idiot. That's why you did these things. The only thing that I've found ever on the internet that a meta-analysis really indicted was smoking and implants. And that's almost everyone's negative. If I get into other things, every time it just says, we need more research. Well, why? How does that relate? It relates because that's what AI is. It's basically a huge meta-analysis of all available information, valid or not valid, in a given topic. It's got to have more control as to what they look at in the AI. Are they looking at a general dentist and the infraalveolar nerve? They're looking at a specialist, looking at a radiologist? Who are they looking at? Or is it just a big milieu of whoever squished together with a mean? You take AI on something like...
So that's interesting. So like on Dental Town, because we have AI in the works right now. So if you were going to ask like a root canal question, like should you do a root canal in one appointment or two?
Yeah.
Should we only pull in the data set of the endodontist?
No.
And leave out the general dentist? Or no, I'm serious. And back to your smoking, one other thing before I forget it. That was Craig Mish and his brother Carl Mish, the late Carl Mish. That was their major beef, is that Carl would place an implant. I mean, he would tell you you're a smoker and you shouldn't. I mean, duh.
Yes.
But Craig says, I won't even do the case.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you. So
Craig's much more hardcore.
Yeah. So who's right, Craig or the late Carl?
Well, that's the point I'm coming to.
And on AI, should Dentaltown include low-life general dentist comments on an endodontic question, or should just ask the specialist? Or should you have two different answers?
Until they filter out who gets into the meta-analysis of the AI, you still have to turn your brain on. I'll give you an example. We did a conjoint project with the University of Utah. Mark Durham was the major person. He's an endowed chair in my name at the university. Very bright prosthodontist, and he lined up a bunch of experts in radiology, dental radiology. And then we did AI, a couple of forms of AI on the interpretation of dental radiographs. Very, very interesting. The AI picked out a couple of things the human eye didn't see, and the human eye picked out several more that the AI didn't pick up. So still, you've got to say this mean. And now when I say mean, as many above as below, that's not an average, but you turn it into an average if you do a couple of means in different mathematical ways, and you end up with an average. Are all your patients average? None of them are average. You might have 2 or 3 in the practice of 2,000. So now I have to look at the AI, what it says, and say, no, this person's older, this person's had diabetes, blah, blah, blah. And obviously you can throw those factors in, but what an ordeal. This thing can do it in that fast. My head, we got a long ways to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, these people like Elon Musk who think AI is going to take over the world. Yeah, maybe 100 or 1,000 years from now, but right now you can't even get it to do anything. And back to the AI, when I was reading about AI and learning about it, Ryan is the one who's been pushing it on us and really motivating us and getting it going here. But as he was telling me about it, and I was reading about, you would need a large data set. And Dentaltown has a large data set. I mean,
it is.
It's got millions of posts.
Yeah.
But then when I was reading that, and I was at Eric's house, and I watched Little Gunner, and Mama told him, don't stand too close to that grill, the charcoal grill. And he, because it's hot, and he reached out and he touched it.
Oh, good.
Well, he touched it one time, he whipped his hand back, and then he never touched it again.
No.
But AI would need like 1 million examples of just keep touching it and burning and touching and burning and say, so yeah, you can already tell that a human natural intelligence at this point in time is significantly better than artificial intelligence. But I do think someday, obviously,
it's coming.
This iPhone could be better than a primate brain.
Yeah. But that project we did was done on a flawed concept, which is the digital radiograph. Do you know that in other parts of medicine, they've not gone to digital? Most of the specialties, they're at phosphor plates, because the phosphor plate basically you're not dealing with nearly the pixel size that you are with the digitals. The digitals of today are the same ones that were used 25 years ago, CMOS sensors. There are a couple of new ones coming out this year that are what's called DC, direct conversion, where they take out the scintillating layer and you get a more definitive thing. We're not even close to where analog was, not even close. And we've gone backwards. We've tested 47 types of technology. Types, not brands. Only 12 were better than analog when it came down to the human judgment. Yeah, no, I'm talking about 47 overall in dentistry, starting with things like CERAC and going on to E4D and going into the cone beams of the various types. A lot of them are impeded by FDA because it costs $1 million or $2 million to go through FDA. So if you look at scanners today, they all look the same. They're like automobiles now. Low front end, steep windshield, those skinny tires, they're almost all the same. Somebody is going to have to jump out and say, well, that fakey fin on the back of the car is not doing any good. So let's find another way to do it. Slape the trunk down or do something. They've all copied one another. You look at a used car lot, and it's like you're seeing double because of all the cars, all the scanners are the same. Big handle, camera wrong angle, too big of a camera.
I remember when we were in grammar school at Blessed Sacrament in Wichita. We were on the second floor of our class, and we could stand there at that window, and every car that went down Douglas, we could tell you what it was.
Oh yeah, I could too.
And now I wouldn't have a clue because they all look the same. But I want to ask you some sticky, controversial questions.
Okay.
So we discovered we talked about it's obvious that and Delta gives us way too little money for clean exams and X-rays, and I think they overpay us on root canals, fillings, crowns, dentures, partials, wisdom teeth, whatever. And and if I have to legally be held to the standard of an endodontist, then I need the resources, to take more time. I don't need to do a molar in an hour. I could spend an hour and a half. You can't give me the resources to build a $30,000 car or a $15,000 Ford Escort and then hold me to the legal deal. So the schism between specialists and deal, I think, is criminal. I mean, it is. It's horrible. These kids come out of school and they go work for a group practice. They'll say, I want to do that molar endo. I've only done 3. No, you can't. Legal says we got to have the endodontist do it. So with that aside, but I want to talk about things where, okay, they're not paying us enough to do a filling. If it was amalgam, they'd all be profitable.
Oh, yeah.
And they'd all last 25 to 50 years, but we can't go down that road because the only thing more controversy than mercury is socialism or, or whatever.
I know.
But you now have these bulk fills. Mm-hmm. And some dentists are saying, nah, if you want to do it right, you need to keep putting in little layers, and you need to spend a half an hour on an MOD. And then there's other people saying, I could fill it up. So bulk fill. For the fee they're giving me, is that acceptable or is that good, or would you still do layers, and are you not a big bulk?
We got a half-hour discussion on it. We've done a lot of research on it. There are bulk fills and there are bulk fills. There are well over 20 so-called bulk fills now. And basically what they've done is make the filler particles more translucent, so it takes the light faster. But in doing so, many have reduced the filler content. And the same with flowables. The conventional composite filler at the present time, a lot of them are zirconia, little zirconia balls, 20 nanometers. They're like dust. That done in a putty form is still, standard of care. As soon as you start to go much more, this is going to sound ridiculous. You try to get much more cure than 2 millimeters. You're kidding yourself. If you're
on a bulk fill,
yeah. If you're into ideal environment, white field, sample is a light color. You come down as close as you can get, exactly perpendicular to the sample. You can get 4 millimeters. But the way the dentist is doing it, half of the dentists aren't using the light. The dental assistant's using the light. Some are well educated. Most of them are trained. Here's the light. We'll run it around in a circle. We just finished a project on it. And with most of them doing that, what I just said, where you've got a big MOD and you're putting the light on it and you run it in a little circle, it would go 2 millimeters, but beyond that, you were kidding yourself. Some of the bulk fills will go 4 in ideal. Some are advertising, believe it or not, now are 9 millimeters. Now, that would be an absolute ideal, a very powerful light, probably overcooking to the point where it would kill the tooth. You got to be careful with the bulk fill. There is a way to make it work better, and that is you've got the big hole in the tooth, in goes the bulk fill. If it's layered and let it settle, and another layer, not curing, layer it, jiggle it, so that it goes into all the nooks and crannies. They're slightly better than the incremental because the incremental have lines between the junctures. They call them knit lines. It's a physical term. So bulk fill, not a major part of dentistry using bulk fill in spite of the big hype on it.
Another one is hygienists. I got to be careful. I know you're married to a hygienist, so I wouldn't want to offend
Yeah.
Rella. I love Rella. But as we talked about earlier, I mean, my God, the hourly wages. I mean, when I started here, they were $20 an hour. Now you can't hire one for 50.
Yeah, 50.
I talked to a guy in San Francisco. He said you got to pay $100 in San Francisco an hour. So, and then Delta again. You know, they're giving endodontists $500 more for a molar root canal than a general dentist. And when it comes to cleaning, you can't even get $100 for it. So my question to you is, with the constraints of the way the insurance is set up, the supply and demand of hygienists, the whole scenario, how could you make a hygiene department more profitable? And by the way, guys, almost everybody that says they have a profitable hygiene department, the one thing they all have in common, they can never show you the math. I mean, you can just sit there and say, okay, let's break up all your fixed cost to just get your operatory cost per hour. And you can't even find them to generate, But anyway, so any ideas on
Yeah,
how to
I do have a lot of ideas. The major one is expand their functions. I have 20 functions for hygienists. Only one is picking teeth. I can take a high school kid and give them 6 weeks and have them pick teeth fairly well. They can't do scaling and root planing, but they can do it in a normal prophy on a younger person. And I'm not suggesting that, but what I'm saying is expand the functions. Get them into sleep medicine. Get them into Botox, occlusal splints. I've got 20 things they do, the revenue-producing things. Then I've got about 20 more that are just time-saving things, where let's say you're in a very difficult impression and you need some more hands. Stop what you're doing, come over here, hold. There's a lot of things you can do, but it's mainly expanded functions. If you try to shorten the time, you know what's going to happen.
So we're in Phoenix, downtown Phoenix right now, and Invisalign is right next door in Tempe. I think it's the biggest brand name that me and the boys ever witnessed. I mean, Ryan, we couldn't go to any country on earth, and we could be at a restaurant, and once they found out I was a dentist, Invisalign. I mean, it could be Vietnam, it could be Thailand, it could be everywhere. It's a big procedure for a lot of money. I mean, if you're $500,000 in student loans, I mean, these cases are, $5,000-$6,000 a case.
Sure.
So what's your thoughts on the scope? We're talking about the scope of practice, general dentists going into clear aligners.
At this time, I have polled that among large audiences, and it's somewhere between 30 and 45% of dentists who are piddling with aligners. However, I don't know what the percentage is, but a sizable percentage of them can't spell orthodontics. In other words, they need to go and have a basic orthodontic continuing education course before they even start it.
Yeah, but you say that, but come on,
they're not going to do it.
No, Richard Litt just passed away.
Yeah.
And he was the only board-certified endodontist. He taught at University of California, San Francisco's program for orthodontics 10 years. Then he went to University of Detroit, Michigan for 10 years. And he said, once you start lecturing in general dentistry, you're completely blackballed.
Oh, yeah.
You're not invited. Any orthodontist that's going to go out there, imagine if the endodontist said that.
Yeah.
I mean, you take the best endodontist in town, like in this town, like say like a Brad Gettleman, Jason Hale, whatever. You can literally drive over and sit next to him as an assistant all day. The oral surgeons, anytime I was talking about wanting to do more implants, they said, well, come assist me, come watch me. But then the orthodontist, oh my God, talk about just, I mean, really, I mean, their organization, and look at the Orthodontic Association out of St. Louis. I mean, that they make Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters look lame. I mean, they're militant about protecting their turf. So where's the ortho education going to come from?
There's a historical perspective there. As you know, oral surgery was the first so-called specialty. I consider all of dentistry one big specialty. It's the biggest specialty in all of medicine. We got 202,000 dentists. No other specialty comes even close. We just got divorced in 1839. And why we did is political. But in the meantime, I consider that ortho is a subspecialty of dentistry. To me, that orthodontist ought to know occlusion. I'm sorry, they don't. When I give courses to orthodontists, Some of them are very good in occlusion, but the majority, it's get the teeth looking good here and carry on and get your $6,000. It's, to me, a frustration, a heavy frustration. I was in a cocktail party. I don't even drink. I got orange juice growing out of my head, though. But I was in a cocktail party, and I was with an orthodontist. It was a lay party. And a woman came up that didn't know me, but she had seen me before. Are you a dentist? Yeah, I'm a dentist. The guy next to me is an orthodontist, but she said, "Are you a dentist?" No, I'm an orthodontist. In other words, it was like he missed dental school. Missed dental school. We're seeing that among some, but they're hurting. We did a major project on orthodontic white spots, 5.5 years, to see if there was something that remineralized those. And don't get excited, because nothing did. 5.5 years. We did pictures with 25,000 pictures with a grid, so you could tell exactly by computer, was that lesion getting bigger, was it getting smaller? Only one product had some effective lack of demineralization. None had remineralization. None. You look at the white spot and you think, oh, it's not as white as it was. Well, obviously they've been brushing and they wear off those little spicules that are sticking up. But as far as remineralization, you can do it in a test tube. You can get some artificial spit, throw some sugar in it, throw a tooth in there, and you can see minor remineralization. But what do you got in the mouth? Mountain Dew, Hershey candy bars. You got a whole milieu of things that don't let that happen. So we're not getting...
Back to bulk fill. What my homie's thinking, you said that there's all kinds of bulk fills. Some are really good and some are just really not. Well, she wants a brand name. Well, what's a good brand name? The 3M brand is 3M. Right on the top. In fact, 3M basically owns composite. Right now, Filtech Supreme Ultra and Filtech Supreme Ultra Flowable, they dominate the market. Any audience I get in, that'll be at least 50 to 60%. You know what? When I started listening to you, you're a big 3M fan even way back in the day.
Yeah.
And but their stock has performed less than a government bond.
I know.
Since I don't know what it is about that company. It's like, how do you have all these perfect products and your stock is always lame?
I have great respect for them from the standpoint I'm going to say, though. Out comes a new concept. Flowable a few years ago, bulk fill a few years ago. They'll come to people like me and they will say, should we go into flowable? I said, no. Several other people said no, because it's reduced filler. Now some of them are for the level where they're okay with the filler. But then it was pathetic. They would wear right on down. So the 3M came out subsequent to the initial introduction of flowables and with bulk fills. So their product... That's probably why the stock doesn't move fast, because the first guy on the market takes that.
Because they're not all about the money then.
No, they're not all about the money. But they're hurting because they've got a major lawsuit going right now. On masks, they've got a great...
Oh, really?
Yeah, major one.
And what's the grounds of the lawsuit?
I don't know the exact grounds, but apparently there was leakage around the edges and some minor lawsuits.
Well, I'll tell you what, that pandemic, I mean, that was, I never ever thought I'd live through a pandemic. Now it's so far gone. I mean, when was that? It was March of 2000, and this is now March of 2024, so that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Gosh, what a crazy time. I mean, I still think it's crazy how... when Americans, I mean, if you want to know how smart your average Joe is,
yes.
When this city of Phoenix or this country found out there was a once in a century pandemic, I mean, the first thing they did is went and bought out all the toilet paper. We had a complete toilet, and I thought
paper towels, toilet paper, Lysol, about 20 items. Yeah.
I thought that was pretty damn funny. But any takeaways now that the pandemic's completely? I mean, and by the way, I want to thank you. We were the first right here. This podcast was the first to have a major conference. Ryan and I pulled it off. We got the help of Ivaclaire. We brought on you and Rel. And I still get people say to this day that it was like our finest moment because the Dentaltown traffic on Dentaltown quadrupled overnight.
Had to.
And everybody had 8 million questions, and you were so loving and giving of your time. And we said, we're going to have a town hall. And you're like, of course. And you've always been there for us, Gordon. You always have.
Well, I'll tell you, Rella is, I'll say it candidly, probably the expert in infection control. So much of it has been dominated by the dollar. I won't name any groups, but the groups that are competitive to reality is they're basically, the research is done by the company. I'll tell you the story on it. When Reagan was president, they cut a lot of federal investigation of infection control products. And therefore, who's going to look at them? Well, up sprung a whole bunch of private companies. Who looks at those companies? Nobody. So the groups that are promoting a lot of infection control products, where's the research coming from? I just said it. It's coming from the company itself. And if you really want some research that'll prove anything, you go to China. And there are many companies that will get any results you want. You just tell them what you want. Well, I used to teach statistics. I know you can do that. You got a lot of hair because, well, you don't have a lot of hair. We could prove you ate whatever, iron in your Wheaties, and I could probably prove that. It's just ridiculous.
Well, one of the things I want to ask you about is now that it's, the pandemic, was 4 years ago. It was March of 2000. And then I think it lasted about a year before, but anyway. But a lot of the investment dollars, like you go into Circle K, they put up these plastic spit shields. And now they're taking all those down. But a lot of dentists put a lot of money into infrastructure.
Oh, tens of thousands.
Yeah, and so now what do you think is worth it to say, hey, you already paid for it? Leave it like on the spit guard over the front desk. Would you leave that there or would you take it down?
Okay.
What is the takeaway from Corona?
I'll give you my opinion. If Rella were here, she'd give you another opinion. She's still wearing a mask when we go to church or any large group. I'm not. Who gets sick? She does.
She does?
Yeah, well, her immune response is low. Yeah. Here's what I predicted. At that time, I had been practicing almost 60 years, 64 years now. And I'm healthy. I still have my brains. I still have my hands. My eyeballs are almost 20/20. And I've breathed that far away from people for all those years. Why did I not get all these diseases? Because of my immune response. Built, to the point where I don't even get a cold. The bottom line, I predicted back when all this nonsense came on that we would return. We have returned. Let me follow that up. Rella wanted to test, I don't think you know this, she wanted to test an operatory. It was probably about as big as this room, maybe a little smaller. We put a door on it. We brought the filthy air from Provo, Utah in. It didn't look filthy, but when we really got looking at it, it was. We put 4-inch HEPA filters about that wide right over, the center part was right over the patient, and then the other part on each side was the dentist and the staff. And the filthy air came in. It went through the HEPA filter. The patient was sitting there. We had Petri dishes. I don't know how many she had. I'm going to guess 40. They were on the walls, the ceiling, the floor. Seriously, if you can imagine, glued on here. And the second the patient opened their mouth, immediate. Every one of those picked up bugs. We did it at different times. And we thought, well, we're going to really show something here. Well, we did show something. The filth in the room cannot be really filtered out. Whether it's an elephant trunk sucking or that big thing that many of them had there, you're looking through a freaking piece of plastic, a 1/4 inch thick. You can't even find a dang tooth. it did show it slightly cut down the organisms in the other operatories. That was in my place, which is 6 operatories. It slightly cut that down. The large consults that were running $1,000 to $5,000, they did nothing. They took it in and pooped them out the other side. It was just amazing, the absolute buyer beware market that was. They were advertising things completely erroneous. Well, people have returned almost exactly to where they were pre-COVID. That's where we are.
Interesting.
It was,
and I want to Josh,
ahead.
I want to ask you go another question. When you and I got out of school, the only way you could get a job is if there was your dad or mom was a dentist, the uncle, a family job, or the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Indian Public Health Service, public health, whatever. Now, probably 80% of those jobs are DSOs. Mm-hmm. And so the one thing I love, I don't think anything's all good or all bad. You can't have up without down, right without left. Everything's on a spectrum. But what I love about DSOs is, man, they give everyone a job. I mean, they all get a job. Number two, my favorite DSO was always Clear Choice with the implants. Mm. My God, when they came to Phoenix, Arizona, they just buy up TV spots all day long. I mean, anytime you're on the TV, surfing the channel, you'd find some 30-minute program with some Clear Choice talk, and then all of your patients would come in, and everybody was seeing it. Sure. And I never heard an oral surgeon complain about Clear Choice because half of the patients he was getting were from their commercials. Yeah. And the other thing I liked about it is in Phoenix with 4 boys, I had to take them to the emergency room about 8 trillion times. But I told them on a Sunday, if you break your, to other people, if you break your arm or leg, an ambulance will pick you up and take you to the hospital, and all the doctors will be there. Uh-huh. But if you knock out your front tooth, there's no chance you'll find a dentist on Sunday. And it wasn't until DSOs came that you started having some 7-day a week, 7 to 7, 7-day a week. Sure. And that dentistry is following pharmacy to some degree. And so probably Aspen is going to be the Walgreens, and probably Heartland is going to be the CVS or whatever. Heartland does the Kroger model. Mm-hmm. So when they buy a grocery out here, they leave the name Fry's, and they buy cans. Whereas Aspen has a rollout name, whereas Heartland's more of a roll-up name. So what is what are your thoughts on DSOs? How that's come to the deal? I don't want to put you in a controversial spot.
No, that's all right.
But what do you?
I'm positive and I'm negative. I've actually written an article in your journal, if you remember. I researched it very heavily before I did that article. I found out a number of things I did not know. I talked with the CEOs of several of the biggies, and we had them in. We had Pacific in great detail, and others. I know Heartland very well as well. Aspen is, I know many of them in that as well. So the big 3 there. The younger dentist has nowhere to go, and they get out of school. They're grossly in debt. If they go to the DSO, they get about $30,000 less than a typical general dentist of the same. Let's get them out a couple of years, $30,000 less. So they know the gross.
If they come out of school and go work at DSO, they make $30,000 less than if you came out of school and went and worked in private practice?
Yes. Okay. That's the current data. They stay a year and a half on the average, and then they look for something else, either an old guy ready to die or a group or whatever. Right now, you undoubtedly know, about 50% of general dentists are either in corporate or group. 50%. Now, corporate and group, you know as well as I, are very different. Group is still private practice where they band together. Corporate, somebody else is telling you what to do. I feel like for that group coming out of school, it's a godsend. I don't know what they would do. They would have to go in with some old guy and make a pittance, maybe do hygiene, and a lot of them are doing hygiene instead of doing dentistry. That's like, in Mexico is so overpopulated with dentists, a lot of them are doing hygiene. So I see positive aspects. the thing I don't like particularly, and maybe it's not as negative as it feels to me, is you're no longer an independent practitioner. You're working with somebody else's brain. You're, in the true word of the sense, a provider. I hate that word. You are not a doctor anymore. You're a provider. You're part of the machinery. And so that I don't like. But the good things are definitely there. It's a place for them to go. It's a place for them to work for a while and get some speed up and have a salary to still feed the family. And done properly and ethically can be very good. Then you got the bottom feeders like any vocation. You've got the group that you wouldn't want to send anybody to. I've helped several groups who are promoting private practice, individual private practice, and if you add together general dentists, it's over 50% are in some form of private practice, according to ADA. Either it's a group private practice or it's a...
Is that urban or rural?
Both.
Because I've noticed that, Steve Thorne of Pacific and Rick Workman of Heartland, they basically all tell me they're not interested in rural because it's so hard to get a doc in the box. They come out of school, they're young, they're single, they're looking for a mate.
Yeah.
So do you want to go to Eloy where there's 2 people, or do you want to go to Phoenix where the metro is 4 million?
Yeah.
And they have such a hard time. And I every couple of months I know of a dentist my age in a small town of like 10,000 or less. And after his practice up for sale for 3 or 4 years, he finally just closed and couldn't sell it.
Sure.
Just closed up and walked away. And it's like, oh my God. And you know who the only ones that will go there is if they're already married and already got kids, because they're not looking for a primate. I already got the wife, the kids. Let's call it home. But I think, but when the demographics are huge, Ryan, you remember when we went to Malaysia and they always had one dental school. And then the private dental schools came up, and 10 of them opened. And when you go from a country with one dental school to 11, I mean, it just wrecked the dental income. I mean, they went from dentists were rare and prestigious to now there was one on every corner. Mm-hmm. So supply and demand is but who's going to be in charge of that? You can't have the dentist in charge of it, because if the dentists were in charge of it, there'd only be one dentist in the United States, and each crown would be $10 million. Only Jeff Bezos could get it. And if the patients were in charge of it, there'd be a dentist on every corner doing it for free.
That's
right. You always know they're an American because they want everything for free.
That's
it's like
right.
they don't want to pay taxes, and they want everything for free. So that's just the human.
It is indeed.
But
yes.
I'm gonna try to. I know you're a busy man, and I'm gonna try to keep these podcasts under an hour.
Okay.
And is there anything? By the way, if you want to know how old is Howard and Gordon. Howard and Gordon are so old that when we got out of school, dental cavities were caused by one bug called Streptococcus mutans. And what did your wife find out about that?
Dr. Rella Christensen, PhD, previously hygienist, but she's been a PhD now for most of her career. Rella has found by a very sophisticated process, which is now going through patent, that there are over 150 types of organisms in dental caries, and that they're related to geographic location, ethnic group, age, gender. I could go through many of the factors, and that's what that project will gradually show, and it'll be one of the most major things that's ever happened in dentistry, because treatment becoming more and more and more antimicrobiologic rather than just cut a hole and put a plug in it, which we do now. People think they seal a composite. Not a single composite seals, not a single one. They're open, big enough for a battalion of bugs to go through the margin to the electron microscope. We tested 22 endo sealers a while ago. Not a single one sealed. Again, it's just a wide open hole with a cork in it. So we've got to get to the chemistry of this whole thing, and pH has to change, diet should change, and it will change all of dentistry.
And the herd mechanism. I mean, if you have a 2-year-old born in a house and everybody that he's sharing that house with has got blown out decay, he's got a lot higher decay rate.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a lot of good notobiotic animal tests, rats, where they will put a rat in who is totally nothing in the mouth at that point, a newborn, and feed him normal rat food, and they have no caries. Now, let the mother come in who has some caries. It's just months before that little rat's all bombed out.
Yeah, because I mean, you couldn't all of a sudden have a giraffe appear in this room. So where does Streptococcus mutans? It's got to come from another ape, and they're kissing you, licking you, sharing a spoon, a cup.
One kiss can transfer millions of organisms. One kiss, because you get a little slobber on the lips, and now whatever that person had, you got.
Yeah,
including dental caries.
Well, yeah. So we'll give Rella my love. I remember her. It was during the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
I remember I think it was during the pandemic show. She told me. She said, Howard, do you know that 40% of the cavities don't even have streptococcus? No, she said she can't find Streptococcus mutans in any cavity past 4 millimeters of depth.
That's right.
She said at 4 millimeters, there's no Streptococcus mutans. But anyway, but Gordon, thanks for all that you do for dentistry.
My pleasure.
Thank you for coming by, and we're so grateful.
We wish you guys well, girls. And I will say candidly, we're in a service profession. If you want to make a ton of money, go out and sell marijuana and cocaine. But if you really want to serve people, they love you, and you will prosper because they want somebody they can trust, somebody who's honest, somebody who has a fair fee, and you will do very well.
And if you do start selling drugs, just email me, howard@dentaltown.com, and we'll get this business rolling.
You can get a hold of me at PCC, Paul Charlie Charlie, PCCdental.com.
And by the way, Gordon, you don't drink coffee in the morning. You said you drink orange juice. You said you have it come in your head. And you motivated me to switch from coffee to orange juice in the morning. And now I don't buy any French vanilla creamer because the only thing I pour in the orange juice is vodka. So I have more vitamins, less.
You got to
fat.
sterilize the gut. Sterilize the gut.
Thank you so much for coming.
You.
It was
my pleasure. My pleasure.